Hey everybody, welcome to another video. We're continuing along into April here with our Marvel comics that came out 40 years ago in 1985. This would be week 16. Again, in case I slip up, I'm recording this week early. I think you all know that by now. So if I mention something and it doesn't sound right, it's because I'm probably off for that reason. But again, we're into week 16 of 1985, Marvel Comics specifically. Remember, I actually need to do an April DC, I think, here. Well, before the end of the month, I'll have to record one. But again, we're just focusing on the Marvel comic books here, and I'm gonna give you my assessment on them. This week's a little sparse. Isn't really the word. I only reread one comic out of all of them. I've got some CBRs up, and we'll look through a few of them, but I only read one of them, and I kind of had to because I'm using it to do a personal project for my Patreon stuff. So I only did read the one comic. Last night I was going to sit down and read a couple more, and I just looked through them, and I'm just like, I shook my head. Let's put this one out here first before we get into this week. I did this last year. I didn't do it on camera and I didn't do it for videos, but I was reading week by week all the stuff from 1984 from Marvel. And I made it about 2 months, and I just got bored out of my mind. It's the same thing is happening. I started trying to read everything that came out in a week. Then I started realizing some of the titles just sucked and I couldn't get through them. And then that slowly dwindled down to essentially what happened in 1985 or 1984. I tried to read a lot, or tried to get a lot, and it kind of just boiled down into just a handful of titles. And then that handful started to lose some finger. I guess that's the analogy. And again, to this day, I will still say my bulk of my comic book reading time, which, again, as we discussed last week, coincidentally aligns with the Copper Age, being, they say 1984 to 1991. I agree with that. Me personally, I would say 1985 to 1989. That's the bulk of my reading, which is only 5 years. 85, 86, 87, 88, 89. It's only 5 real years. Now, granted, I did get some titles because, again, I was down to just a few titles here up until 91. By the time of 91, I kind of washed my hands of it all. And again, my 1984, I kind of went in half in the year. It's when I first started getting into it. So I really don't count those too far extremes as much. So for me, my prime reading years of comics were, and specifically Marvel Comics, was 1985 to 1989, which is the core of the Copper Age, and was the core of what was considered the modern age for the longest time. And I guess it still is by some people. It just depends on who you talk to. But again, the same thing I see is happening. It's just repeating itself. I started out reading a lot, and then it shrank to a small amount of numbers until it completely went away. Last year I tried to do this again, and I'm going to continue to do this. I hope. I don't think I'm going to literally, degrade into entropy at any time, but I think, or apathy more than entropy. Sorry. But I think, like I said, the same thing is happening. I'm starting to lose interest in the stuff quickly, and I want to make this clear. I've made videos on it before. People have disagreed with me talking about, what's really the difference between comic books today and comic books of this time period. Yes, there are a lot of physical differences. There's that difference in tastes. The world's a different place. there's a lot of things that change. Just like the world, if you look at 1985, it's a lot different than comics that came out in 1955. We're talking 40 years, so let's put it back to 1945. The heart of the golden age of comic books is a lot different than the Copper Age in 1985. Arguably, the Copper Age is a lot different from whatever the age they consider we're into now. So, like I said, there's lots of different arguments for it, but me personally, I'm not going to get into anything about agendas or this or the comics or this or comics or to that, with the exception of the art. Now, I guess through and through, what kept me interested in comic books for especially those years, and what's always had me going back to comic books, is my love of comic book art. Not comic book stories. Because arguably, if I'm losing interest in these comics that were quote-unquote the golden age of comic books, or not the golden age, the Copper Age, but the golden, they consider it like the primo shit, right, is the 80s. I'm losing my interest just as much as I'm losing my interest reading a modern comic book comes out today. I mean, case in point, these are I think these are the last of the subscriptions I got. I think these fulfill my subscription obligations. I have to renew if I want to get more, but I believe this is it. So we got Uncanny X-Men. We've got the new West Coast Avengers, which may or may not even be out on the shelves yet. It came yesterday in the mail, along with this one. Just the regular X-Men. And I gotta say, these comics here bore me to tears. But they bore me to tears in the same way that I'll get into a few comic books here where I started a page, 2-page into it, and I give up, I tap out. I talked to a friend, a lifelong friend, the one actually, my big comic book buddy that I met in 87, when I was in 8th grade at Ruther, mid-year. And I talked to him on Friday. We hung out with my other friend of that time frame. We got into a conversation about this, and he basically said, and he's not asking a question that I haven't asked myself a lot of times, but just hearing somebody else say it who's in the know really kind of drives it home. He said, Tim, maybe you just don't like comic books anymore. And you know what? I don't know if that's 100% true, but I really feel like it's edging towards that. Edging. I don't know why I use that word. But anyways, I don't know. He might be right. I mean, I'm 52, In this time frame we're talking about here, I was 12. Again, specifically, I was 11. My birthday wasn't until July. We're still in April here. But, 40 years ago, I was a completely different person. But a lot of the same tendencies are happening. And if I only made it, if I only make it for 5 years in the prime age of comic book collecting, during one of the prime times, pre-internet, the 80s, there's nothing more for a kid, a Gen Xer couldn't be perfect. And I only made it 5 years of serious comic book reading and collecting. Then how am I to think that today that it's going to endure for any length of time? If I started on the new Marvel stuff, let's just say hypothetically 5 years ago, I should be, if you take, and this is not the 80s, we have the internet, we have many more distractions. Comic books are arguably not as good. I can argue that all day, but how do you expect me to stay interested in it today without it? It just becomes a grind or just a habit at that point, where you're just like, I've got to keep feeding the addiction of something. And this is what I used to take, used to inject myself with, and now I'm just like, it's just, again, I keep going into apathy here. So I bored you for 10 minutes. So let's get into the beef of this video here. So first, let's go to this one, and I'll scroll it up a little bit. As you can see here, we're in week 16, 1985. And again, some of the things I just got through saying might you're going to see some of this stuff in real time here. Sorry. First of all, let's just say that I never got into them then, meaning the Epic comics. I really can't get into them today. Here's Coyote. I think it's Coyote is the first one that's come up since I started doing these videos. The first Coyote. I don't know, I keep saying it like that. Just fun. And there's Epic. I had that Epic Illustrated magazine. I literally had that Epic. I had it twice. I bought that when it came out, and I also found that at a comic book convention, like a quarter bin at one point. So, I did not go back and read either one of those. And like I said, I think I'm going forward. I think I'm not going to revisit the Epic stuff. I guess I wasn't of the right, I don't know how to specifically put this, but was this for older readers, which I wasn't at the time. Now I'm definitely old enough to read it, and it doesn't really do it for me. And I'm trying to think, I don't know. There are a few things here and there. Some of the art is really nice. I like the art. And again, I think with comic books, I guess that's what it comes down to. This also plays into the whole thing of not being able to read. This also plays into people not reading nowadays. Young boys not having an interest in reading. That arguably today everything is all visual and audio, and audio, video and audio, or image and audio. It doesn't have to be video specific. Obviously memes are static images, and memes are immensely popular, but is it like I said, visual, I guess, for a young boy and now an old boy, I guess visual stuff still holds true today. And again, being an artist myself, doing comic book art myself, loving the look of a lot of stuff. And I gotta say, as much as some of the artwork I think is great today, I like a lot of the artwork of the past, and mainly for its simplicity. And it's simplicity yet realism. I'll get to that. And it's basically, that comes down to the Marvel way. How to draw comics the Marvel way. That's, I think, that in and of itself, before story, before character, before publisher, I think the thing I fell in love with in 1984 was how to draw comics the Marvel way, and everything in that title. Meaning comics, how to draw them the Marvel way. That's what I fell in love with. That's why I'm doing Marvel and not really doing DC. It's why I never really got into DC back then, even though arguably the DC style wasn't too far off from the House Marvel style at the time. Today, I have a tendency to lean more towards the Marvel titles over the DC ones. And again, today there's no House style, which I don't like, and I find that the artwork is a little too complex, too many colors. Like I said, I like a narrow, limited color palette of whatever they had. I can't remember how many they were, but all of the original. DC called them Pantones for their style guide. Marvel specifically used the Dr. Martens colored inks, and they all have letters and numbers that coordinate with them. And I think I want to say there's, off the top of my head, I should know this because I use it every day, I think they're 68 or 72, something like that. This also goes back to, and again, the reason I like that is at the time, like when you'd buy a marker set, you'd only get a finite amount of markers. You'd buy a colored pencil set, you'd only get a finite amount of colored pencils. And you were forced to create a world visually with that limited palette. I mean, sure, you could blend with pencils. Markers didn't blend so well, but with with pencils you could blend, you know, that type of thing. But by and large, I didn't use them like that. I used them as I really colored them hard in for like to make them opaque as possible, just like a marker would. That's why I preferred markers better, because it would just, you know, mark the paper, the white paper, on the black lines, and you'd get that color. And I liked having that minimum. I liked being like, okay, this character can only be 3 or 4 colors, and it's got to be readily identifiable. And that's when you look at like characters like you can see them there. Secret Wars 2 is a good example of, you know, you can see it even from afar here. You can see Captain America, he stands out. Wolverine stands out. Iron Man stands out because the limited amount of, you know, today with you've got the whole, you know, there's unlimited colors because of digital. Things can look different and still be the same thing, and I don't like that. I like things to be quick, easy, recognizable. Sorry, I keep going off in tangents. Let's get into this. So again, we're gonna take the epic stuff and throw it out the window. Again, likewise, for the most part, until I think there might have been a Star imprint I kind of liked, but for the most part, let's take the Star comics, which of course that Get Along Gang is the UK magazine version, but it's also in the Star imprints. We're going to take Star imprints and throw them out the window. We're going to take Epic and throw them out the window. Even Alien Legion, I might try to read another one. But for the most part, we're just going to stick with Marvel, and we will still talk about some of the extended universe stuff, meaning Transformers, Star Wars, G.I. Joe. And again, we're also going to discontinue all the UK magazines like the Transformers UK you see down there, 16, because those weren't a thing back in the... I mean, they were for UK, but they weren't for us. So, meaning myself here in the States. So we're gonna focus on these. All right, let's get into them. I can switch screens over since we're focused. We're also gonna rule out the indexes and Marvel Tales when it pops up, which is just reprints. We may talk about Classic X-Men when it starts with Classic X-Men, because I did actually pick that up at the time. But let's go to the comics we're talking about here. So we'll go to the New Defenders. I was about to read it. Sorry, it was set up differently. Let's make this easier so it looks better. Okay. I've never been a huge Defenders fan. Again, the Defenders always seemed to be something I would collect in like quarter bins. It was just like, you know, you go to I used to go to Winchester Mall. Used to have like this, I don't even know what it was, some kind of show. Wasn't a comic book show, wasn't necessarily a sports card show, but there was a lot of vendors set up in the main mall area who would have a one long box of comic books, not bagged, just loosely thrown in there. They might have some football cards or some baseball cards, maybe even some hockey cards. But they really, you know, they might have some. It was kind of like just a everything show, and you know, I used to go through that quarter bin. You know, it was a quarter bin. Every comic in there was 25 cents. And I would pull out a lot of Defender, a lot of 70s stuff, a lot of Defenders, a lot of Man-Thing, Werewolf by Night, Moon Knight, you know, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, which, you know, I didn't really collect. But once in a while, if I saw a Defenders cover, I might pick it up because I like the cover. So to me, Defenders, right off the bat, is a hard read. Sorry. I'm trying to get on this right after lunch and I'm already yawning again. I don't know what it is. Maybe just the camera makes me yawn. Maybe just constantly talking wipes me out. I don't know. Again, I spend the whole morning, essentially, if I talk, I'm only talking to myself. I don't even have a pet. Speaking of the animal there, pet running around for me to talk to. So by the time I start speaking, I've got some gravel in my voice. I don't like this art. I don't like this art one bit. I find it a little too simplistic. It's not... I mean, like, the soldiers there look fine. It's not horrendous. This is Don Perlin. Again, I know the name. I don't associate his... Is this his style? I don't know. I'd have to go look at more Don Perlin stuff. I mean, I heard the name a lot. And maybe it's Art Nichols, the inker. Maybe he's the one who's putting all these heavy blacks, making everything very angular. I mean, the shot sequences, though, as far as, like, comics drawn the Marvel way, at least, like, that long shot panel on top, this semi-splash page here with a bird's eye view. I mean, these are textbook how to draw comics the Marvel way composition. I just think that the execution, the rendering of the characters, like that beast, just looks weird. And because, like I said, because I'm a visual person, I guess this, you know, even if I don't read the comic, at least I can give you my 2 cents on what I see on the art. Again, the coloring's fine. I think the heavy use of blacks is a little too heavy-handed here, in my opinion. Some people might like that. You know, the faces are okay. The women don't look great. The guy up there in the glasses, he looks okay in the suit. You can tell this is definitely pre-9/11, but I don't know what's going on with the two Twin Towers there. Somebody did not use a ruler. That or they're having an earthquake at the time. But look at those, and those didn't look good. These bird's eye view of rooftops in New York with like the water towers and the skylights. That looks nice. Again, I think it's a little too much black in it. I think that ground you see, you can't see me pointing here, but if you'll see like where that water tower is in the big panel, making that all black there, I think was kind of a mistake. They should have left that a color. Maybe see the I know the color from the palette, but that brownish color, kind of grayish brown, they could have used that. They could have even just taken that gray color and used it. I don't think it needed to be black like that. Just like where the skylight is around here on this building, where the windows open, this little probe is, or whatever this is opening the window. That's too much black on the bottom of that skylight. I just think for all that work that they did, it's funny because I did a drawing in college, and my professor Katz, he walked over and he's like, "Wow, you spent all that time doing all that really nice perspective," and then he just came through and just destroyed it with too much black. And I was just kind of like, I think I knew he was right, but I was just kind of angry at the time. And I'm saying the same thing he says here. I think to go through that much work to draw a panel like that, I think they ruined it with too much black. And again, too much black here, too much black in her outfit. You don't need to have all of the underside of her. If you're going to go through and do the folds of her robe and the belt, you know, I don't know if they're trying to avoid doing the underside of her boob here or what was going on, but they don't. That's too much black. And, you know, the black in the face is where I find it to be the most egregious. I mean, look at that. It just looks terrible. You know, this is more of a close-up shot, and it's just, she doesn't look right. This person is, either the inker is destroying Perlin's work, or Perlin's not that good at drawing faces. Again, this for what all the crap that's going on in this panel, I find that this is just so, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of it. That's a terrible face. I mean, this isn't, I mean, the blockiness is fine. I mean, look at old Kirby stuff. And again, I'm kind of, you know, here's my thoughts on Kirby. When I was a kid, when I was this age, 1985, you showed me a comic book done by Kirby, I'd hate it. I'd go, ugh. I totally just turned my nose up at it. As I got older, more mature, started to understand in Kirby's contribution to comic books, and started to really do my studying, you know, and learn the history and learn method and technique, and realize that Kirby laid down the foundation for a lot of this stuff, especially the compositions, you know, and that whole, you know, where everything seems like it's moving on the page. I understand all that. And so it gave me like more, like I could start appreciating Kirby more. I'm starting to fall back to where I was in 1985 as a kid and realize I don't don't know if I like his art. I mean, I understand all of it. I understand. This is the same. I had this discussion at a comic book convention. And I said, Steranko was there at the con, and I said, I don't know why anybody likes it. What did he do? Like 20 comics? He's this groundbreaking guy who did like 20 comic books. I mean, there's many comic book artists that did thousands of comics. What's so special about this guy for doing 20? Oh, well, the 20 that he did are groundbreaking. Okay. I guess. I mean, I understand that. That doesn't make me like his art anymore. Same thing here. And so, like I said, I think Perlin is one of those guys, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's in that camp. But again, I mean, that's not a bad panel. As I said, the compositions aren't bad. It's the execution I find to be wonky, and too much heavy blacks. I mean, I like Valkyrie. I think she looks attractive, and she does not look attractive in that picture. She looks... I don't know what's going on with her there. She looks rough. Yeah, I don't... they've taken the attractiveness out of Valkyrie there. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like it. I guess that's what it comes down to. So let's go to a comic book artist that I do like. John Byrne. Now, again, I want to see something here. This is number 280. This came out this week, 40 years ago. Keep that in mind. Every time I say it came out this week, I don't mean now. I mean 40 years ago. Well, this week, 40 years ago. Again, this is She-Hulk. Fantastic. My favorite. They actually have an action figure coming out. I think it's just a reprint of the action figure they have, but a repaint. But they have her in the costume, in my favorite costume she's in, and I don't even know if I can bring myself to buy it. Just because figures are way too expensive, and at the end of the day, what I do, I look at it, I set it on the table, and then it ends up back in its box or a baggie, and then ends up, in a bin, and then, yeah. Okay, so it doesn't, okay, Jerry Ordway is the inker. If I'm not mistaken, I don't like the way this is inked. At least the cover I didn't. Maybe the interior is not as bad. And I just find something going on with the inking. I don't know what it is over his work here. This is a comic that I had bought this off the shelf back in the day, and I read it, and I started reading it again, and I think maybe here or maybe here. I don't know. I just got one of these pages, and I literally, I think I got here, and I was like, what did I just read? I mean, it was just so, it didn't excite me. And again, which begs the question, maybe it's not that I'm getting burnt out. I mean, you can read a handful of comic books every week and not be burnt out. Can you? Is that too much? I mean, some people have like an insatiable thirst for whatever media they consume, So I find that reading a handful of old comics in a week and maybe a couple of new comics in a week doesn't seem to be enough to burn you out. Unless, it is. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if it's burnout, what it is. Like, again, just me losing my interest in it so quick. I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe I can narrow it down the more I think about it, and do some self-reflection here. Oh, I just noticed a mistake. See the yellow up there in the second panel, right between his calves? That little spot should be yellow. Mesh that. They left that little hole out there. I don't think this is Byrne's best work. I find it to be okay. It's serviceable. But again, I think, he's still doing... What was he doing? 3 comics at this time? He was doing Fantastic Four. It was just 2 at the time. I know obviously he's doing Fantastic Four. It's still doing Alpha Flight. I can't... Maybe... I think he's also in the 2. I know he did like 3 at one point. I don't know what's going on in his life. I mean, sometimes things go on in my life, obviously, and I feel like I phone things in just because I can't put all of my mental bandwidth on it. Maybe that's going on in his life. I know he had kids by this time, so maybe something was going on. Who knows? It's not that this is terrible. I just find it to be very lackluster. I mean, Chulky looks fine. That's nice. That's a nice rendering with the, especially using the light. That obviously is Oliver doing the color here. I find this panel. I know it's just to show speed or whatever. This panel feels a little disjointed. Solid worm's eye shot up there. It's a good She-Hulk. Great She-Hulk face there. She's kicking the van apart. It's not bad. There's this explosion. I mean, the best thing I did flip. I didn't finish the comic, but I did flip to the end, and I did notice this is where Malice shows up. Now I don't know if anybody knows or who's playing the game Marvel Rivals, but they, a few weeks ago or a month ago or whatever, they put Malice in the game, which is the evil Sue Storm, and I guess it like ignited the sales of the game and subscriptions, and then actually because of that in turn made the next comic, not this one, but the next comic, this one probably as well, but I know definitely the next one, she's on the cover, made kind of artificially inflated the value of that comic. But yeah, so I'm just pointing that out. This is where she shows up. Mistress of Hate. Malice, the Mistress of Hate. I've got a character in my story that I'm kind of sort of tangentially playing off of with this character. It's a good first panel. Her arm looks a little short in that second panel. She tries to punch her. Obviously it didn't work. So it's kind of neat. You gotta get some Malice. Wait, is this the... Oh, I thought that was the last page. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on with her left butt cheek and her cape there. I don't know what's going on there. I mean, a lot of these cool long shots, vertical long shots where, showing the ground rise up in the air with She-Hulk. That stuff's neat. This is where the burn starts to shine. As far as that costume Malice is wearing, I'm not a huge fan of it. I mean, I understand it's supposed to look like a dominatrix, kind of an evil character. I don't know. I don't think Byrne's very good at pulling that off. I think other people have been better. I think like Hellfire Club Jean Grey looks a little bit more convincing, and it's Byrne who did that, than this evil Malice. And I'm wondering too if this is I think, I'm not 100% certain, I think he wrote this comic. Is he just basically, hey, Hellfire Jean Grey was popular, so how about we do a Hellfire version of Invisible Woman? I don't know what the mentality was at the time. And I don't know it today. Personally, I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about it or read anything much about it. Well, as far as what people were thinking. I guess if I met Byrne, I mean, I met him once. Actually, I met him twice. But if I had some time to sit down and talk to him, I'd ask him, or Claremont even, or any of those guys. I guess I should start writing down all my questions. I don't know if I'll ever meet them because they're getting up there in age. I don't know if I'll ever meet them and be able to get to ask those questions or whatnot. But yeah, it's not bad. I think the end of this part where Malice shows up, I probably should just stuck it out and kept reading it. But I mean, I'm looking at it kind of now what's going on without actually reading the dialogue. Yeah, she pulls it off, and it's Sue Storm. Oh, it's Sue Storm. Now, I don't know. I don't know if I really like the kind of mullet hair. Not to be not to be pointing fingers. I still keep looking like Dog the Bounty Hunter. But anyways, I don't know if I like the mullet hair Sue Storm. The art definitely seems like it's getting better in this comic as we go. There's last page. What'd you think of it? Tell me in the comments what you thought about it. Again, going into Iron Man, I'm just going to flip. I'm not going to go take much time on this, but Iron Man 196, we're so close to the Ironmonger issue 200, like I said, where I really started to kind of pay attention to Iron Man, but I had found a few of these. Oh, Shaman again. Can I get away from this character? He seems to be in everything at this time. Love the Shaman. It's a Grim Reaper, I think is the character. That character there. Oof. I don't know if I like the parts of that drawing look bad. I'm not. Like I said, I wasn't gonna read this one. I'm gonna read issue 2 when I get to the issue 200, which should be coming up soon. I am definitely gonna reread that issue. It's a double-sized issue, which for some reason Did you guys get this when you were a kid, or even nowadays? When you come across the double-sized issue, are you of what mind are you of? Are you of the mind like as in, oh yeah, I'm getting twice as much comic for the same price. Woohoo! I want more. Or like me, being a terrible reader at the time, did you just go like, oh god, I gotta read twice as much? It's funny, I was watching F is for Family with my son, and we come across this one. Kevin's like, he's reading a brochure, and he reads through, he's like, yeah, fine, I read it. And she's like, well, did you read the back? There's a back! I feel like the same thing. Frodo's in books? Anyways, I don't know. For me, usually what happens with unless I know going in that it's a double-sized issue because it says it right on the cover and I notice it, or I could feel it when I pick it up if I'm talking about a physical copy, 9 times out of 10 what happens to me is I start reading a comic and either have to be somewhere or I want to fall asleep or I only have a finite amount of time to read or I'm just kind of getting sick of reading. Like, I hate this reading stuff. And then I get to, like, what you would think would be like issue 20 or issue 22. And suddenly I look down and I'm on issue like 29. And then I look and I go, oh, it's a double-sized issue. And I actually get irritated. I get angry. Like, I gotta read the rest of this freaking book. Even if I'm enjoying the comic, I'm still like, I gotta read more. Which, again, also probably plays into my issues with story. Having to read the comic books. I mean, let alone reading a novel. Reading a comic book was taxing to me then and still today. You're reading a novel, even though I've read plenty of them. I think we are getting stupider. I think we are getting dumber. I was getting dumber 40 years ago. But I think most people are getting dumber. And all the thing where people are talking about how young boys don't read anymore, I don't think they do. I know my son doesn't read anymore. Yeah. All right, we'll get out of this one. I don't even know who that villain is. Rocket Raccoon, again, I don't like anthropomorphic characters. And this one is just chock filled with anthropomorphic characters, and I'm not a huge... The only reason Rocket Raccoon even pops out in my head, I probably said this before, is because he shows up in the Marvel Universe Deluxe Edition right before Rogue. I see that green, and I see his Rocket Raccoon. I know Rogue is right around the corner. Alright, let's get to the big issue that I read. Secret Wars #2. Now remember, the whole reason I got into comic books for the most part was because of Secret Wars 1 coming out the previous year. And as you can tell, I mean, look at the poster on my wall. I mean, Secret Wars was the thing that got me into it. And because of seeing all those heroes together, it wasn't even necessarily the Mike Zeck art, but I like the Mike Zeck art. Coming to Secret Wars 2 is funny because a previous time that I talked to my friend, the one that made the comment about maybe I don't like comics anymore, I mentioned my plan, what I was doing here, and he goes, oh, wait till you get to Secret Wars 2, good luck. And I knew what he was talking about because I think we had the same problem back in the day was, and I don't know, also, are you this person? Did you have Secret Wars 2 but never read it? As in, you read Secret Wars 1, you enjoyed it. Secret Wars 2 came out, and you may have read 1, or you just like, oh, I don't know, and you just kind of like, I've got it. I've got the issues, and I've never read them, because that was me. Back in the day, I bought this issue because it was Secret Wars 2, had to have it. And then I realized, oh, there's only 9 issues in this, not 12. Going back to, the double page, I gotta read more? It's weird how the weird things in my head, it's like, oh, it's not a 12-issue series like the first one. I didn't want it to be. I just want it to be because of, I have to have things conform. Things have to be, it makes sense and logical. And if you're going to make a 12-series maxi series, you have to have a 12. Even if I don't want to read 12 issues, I gotta have 12. And then you put 9 on here, it irritates. I find this the same way with Netflix. And I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I did not watch the last episode of Daredevil, and I may not watch the episode today. Again, same thing. You come out, let's say there's, Game of Thrones has 10 episodes, right? Which I did like those at the time, at least up to season 4. And then the next season you get like 8. I'm like, why don't I get 10? Right? But even when I find a series that I kind of get bored with, like The Acolyte, I couldn't even finish watching it. Oh, but why isn't there the same amount of Acolyte episodes as there was Obi-Wan? Even though I didn't like Obi-Wan either. But you know what I mean? It's like, do you want more? No. But I want it to match. Because I'm more OCD about matching big things conforming than actually wanting this stuff. It's weird. So same thing with this one. I saw the 9 issues. I'm like, what? What? Not 12? I'm not going to read it anyways. Why am I even getting upset? But it's just how I worked. Were you like that? Or am I just a lunatic? I was probably just a lunatic. Okay, so this whole thing sets up with Beyonder comes back to Earth. I read the first issue, like I said, because I'm kind of riffing off of it for my own work. And I gotta say, normally Al Milgram's art in West Coast Avengers, I liked. And maybe it's this inker guy doing it, but this Al Milgram art in here is... this is what I feel. I feel this is weird, too. I feel like, hey, Al, can you draw the West Coast Adventures? Sure. Can you draw the ongoing series? Sure, I can do that. He's fine, right? I feel like you're saying, hey, Al, do you want to do this 9-issue maxi series or whatever, limited series? And he's like, sure. But maybe because he was doing, or he was just about, I don't think West Coast Avengers started yet. Have we hit West Coast Avengers yet? But maybe he was being taxed because this one that, or maybe just the Shooter's script, what Shooter was coming up with. Maybe it was just I don't know. I feel like there was a disconnect somewhere between Milgram and Shooter in this, and I don't think Milgram doesn't normally do this lousy of art. Although a lot of people aren't fans with him, I like him. But he is more simplistic, a little more rough than some of the heavy hitters. But by a long shot. I mean, I would put Milgram a step down from Sal Buscema. And Sal, of course, is a step down from his brother, John. So in the hierarchy, if you put John, there are 3 Johns at the top, Ramita, Buscema, and Byrne at the top, right? They're the top tier. And then you go down from there a tier, you get the Sal Buscemas, the John Romita Jr.'s. You get that tier of people. Milgram is the 3rd tier. Now, he's definitely not the 4th or 5th, but he's definitely a 3rd tier. And I'm not trying to pick fun of I met the guy before, and he seemed like a normal guy, a nice guy, so I'm not trying to attack him or anything, but I mean, he definitely is a workhorse. He's just like Sal Buscema. I mean, you can't take that away from him. He is a workhorse. But he's definitely in that 3rd tier of artists that draw the Marvel way. This work that he put forth in this comic is like 4th tier art. Something's going on here. So there's a disconnect somewhere. Something's going on. But when they open up a comic when it's got a bunch of space and swirls and a bunch of this linear, ethereal, linear, weird mumbo jumbo. I just said that because it makes no sense. But anyways, I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of it. And you see Marcia. What's weird in this is, I know, I can't remember what the guy's name is. The Marcia's husband there, or boyfriend, or whatever he is, from the first one. I can't remember that. And his name escapes me at the moment. I know he started off as a woman and then becomes a guy. I can't remember what was going on with that, but he definitely looks like a woman there. He doesn't look like a dude. So I don't know what's going on with that. Also, the weird tattoos on his face also I think of like the tattoos on Rachel Summers' face too. Two like looking characters as far as just their little visual trope that they threw into them. They don't necessarily look like each other, but anyways, I'm not going to get into I'm not going to summarize all the Secret Wars, but essentially what happens is the Beyonders coming to Earth, Kadum, blah, blah, blah. She turns into volcanic form, starts, destroying some of these giant chunks of Earth that come flying over, and then they're like, hey, maybe that might hurt somebody. And then, the Beyonder shows up. And the Beyonders, and then you get, Charles Xavier's kind of like, what? The Beyonder? He wakes up out of this dream. He's on Muir Island with Maury McTaggart. The New Mutants are there. I can't remember why. And then Captain America's on a... It's funny. They even say it in this. So why is Captain America on a commercial flight flying coach? Doesn't he have a Quinjet? I know he doesn't fly, but I don't know. I find that weird. But he gets a mental message from Charles Xavier saying the Beyonder's back. He's, Captain America's like, good Lord. And then they give you a little bit of a recap from Secret Wars 1, which gives you a little talking Cap head up there. And then you get, they go back to Marcia and that guy who I can't remember his name is. And there's the Beyonder, and Beyonder's kind of an amalgamation of a bunch of different characters. And then we go to the X-Men mansion. They've got that iteration of Magneto's there wearing that outfit, if you know that outfit. And then they get into this big scuffle because they don't want Magneto there, but Colossus and Nightcrawler kind of defending, like, hey, it's not about Magneto. We've got this premonition, or we got this message from Xavier. And then, of course, I find the other thing weird. It's like they go get one of the limousines, and then Magneto just makes it fly with his magnetic powers. It's just weird. Why was the Blackbird not there at the time? I can't remember what was going on with the Blackbird. Maybe they didn't have one at the moment. Maybe it was just it needed some work. I just thought that was weird. And then basically everybody's going out to California, and I can't remember why. But anyways, there's this writer. Like I said, I don't want to give a blow by blow of this, but there's Rachel Summers shows up there. Basically, the Beyonder, he gives this writer guy who's kind of mad at his bosses, and he gives him like some powers, and then he kind of goes on a tirade, which is weird. It is, like my friend said, wait till you get to Secret Wars 2. Secret Wars 2 is nothing like Secret Wars 1, and the artwork's not that great, and the story is so convoluted and bad. I'm trying to think, did Shooter write? I should know this, but I don't. I can't remember. Maybe I do and I just can't remember it. Did Shooter write Secret Wars 1? I know he came up with the concept. I don't know if he wrote it. If he wrote it, he definitely he blew his wad in that one, because the writing in this is really not good. It's not bad. It's just not good. And then we get... I gotta have the McDonald's insert here. Yeah. There's Rachel in her weird suspender outfit. Magic's there. I mean, everybody basically gets, just like, you would expect with the book with all the characters, they all end up in a spot, together. In this case, it's in California. I think it's in Hollywood, Los Angeles area, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm kind of spoofing it. So, but even in spoofing it, it's hard to read, to even to draw from my own stuff that I'm doing. It's just like woo. And again, I mean, I had this whole series when it came out, and I never read a single issue because it just I think I just looked inside and like, ooh, I don't like the art. And it's just like there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of words, looks complicated, and then of course I tapped out. But I mean, at the time, as you'll see, the events that happened in Secret Wars 2 with the Beyonder coming back start showing up in a lot of other comic books at this time too as well, including the X-Men. Pretty much any character that I think happens in this comic, they go into more detail in their own books. Here's another, I mean, I'm just shitting all over the comic books this week, but here's another issue I had with this is, we get back to the Peter Parker again, and again, a black costume, nope, not in it. This character, it's the whole, kids like skateboards, kids like characters, and he's like a villain, like a made-up villain, like just for the sake of the issue. I didn't read it, so I could be wrong on that. I know I had this as a kid. This might be another issue. I think I came to the same conclusion when I opened it up. Even when I bought it, I was like, well, he's not in the black costume, and I don't know who this villain is. And, it's like the skateboarding villain. Of course, I was into skateboarding at the time because it's 1985. But it doesn't look like... Here's the other thing that's weird. Whenever I saw, like, skateboards and stuff, it's always like these old, like we had a skateboard that looked like this when I was a kid. It was my sister's. And that doesn't look like the modern 1985 skateboards, like the Tony Hawks and the Caballeros, those... Because I had a Caballero right at this time. No, I didn't get it yet. It's still April, so I didn't get the skateboard until it warmed up. I think June is when I got it. I think just like the previous year when I started riding my bike to the comic book shop, because of Secret Wars ones, I think fast forward 1 year, that's when, as soon as it started getting nice out and I discovered these skateboards up at West Coast Connections in Winchester Mall, I got into the skateboard. So it still we haven't got to that point yet. We also haven't got to my Tamiya RC hobby time, which also happened this summer as well. Because I'm pretty sure, yes, Joe's Hobby Shop opens up in, I think, June, or May or June. So it hasn't opened up yet. So I know West Coast Connections was there because I would go up to Fireside and there'd be West Coast Connections, but I didn't see the skateboards at the time yet. So anyways, but when I see the skateboard, it's like, oh, it's not the skateboards that I'm, with the cool graphics on it and then blah blah blah. So I'm weird like that. Like, oh, that board does not look like the right board at the time. Looks almost like a popsicle board that's out now, like my son has. I don't know. I'm not going to say, because people are probably going to accuse me of this. You didn't like this comic because the villain's black. That's not why. I don't like the villain because I don't readily recognize who he was. I assume it's some kid that decides to go on a bank heist spree or whatever because he's got these newfound powers and he likes skateboards. And Spider-Man's got to come after him and do the whole, kid, you should stay in school and stop robbing banks with your superpowers, right? It's one of those issues. And then, oh god, that's a terrible... Who does the artwork in this? Vince Gugeriano and Pat Redding do the art, so I'm assuming that's penciler and inker. Story by Mantlo, whatever. This art is not good. That panel right there with the bounty hunter guy is, oof, that's wrong, rough. That's the thing that's the other thing. He shows up at the end here. I guess you got to spell things. I guess to 11-year-old me, you have to really spell things out and not try to make things at all sophisticated to a kid who couldn't read. But when you look at the cover, I just assumed he was going to be, and he's got a gun. You know, every time I saw it, this is right about the time the Punisher started to get popular. Oh, you got like an assassin, like a assassin character who's a marksman with a rifle, and he's got this crazy suit. And I just assumed, and he's an adult, not a kid. I just assumed that's what the story was about. And when I got in here, and it's about this kid, and it's just like, oh, I don't want a kid in my comic. You know, Spider-Man to me at the time was not a kid. He was an adult. And it's like, I want to see another adult. Him fighting another adult. And I want to be this marksman guy. And you got this comic where, oh, now he shows up, but it's a terrible drawing. There's a lot of things I can see psychologically that worked against me on this comic back in the time. So we'll leave it at that. As you can tell, I have a lot of weird mental gymnastics when it comes to my comic book reading. Maybe it's just me, a subconscious way of me just loving the art because I'm a visual person, and me being a shitty reader and just not wanting to have to put in the work to read it. That could be it. And then when I see bad artwork like that cover here, it looks terrible. And looks nothing like Star Wars with these, whatever these are, these ElfQuest characters. It's got to be good art, and I don't care about story. I guess that's what it comes down to, which is basically the 90s, and we know how that turned out. Which, good art, in quotations. It's Cynthia Martin again. Like I said, outside of that really nice rogue drawing, I do not like her art. It's very pretty looking. It's very color. I mean, that's not her. That's the colorist. Petra Scotties is the colorist. I don't like. We're getting towards the end of the Marvel Star Wars at the time, but yeah, this is when Star Wars is just like, and then you got to throw the Sandman in there for no apparent reason. Which is not the Sandman, but it might as well be the Sandman. I kind of like the purple girl. What's going on with her there? So she can't get out of that machine. He's going to give her the old Empire Strikes Back Lando Cloud City torture device here by Sandman. Again, I still had a subscription at this time. When I got comics like this, I just kind of rolled my eyes then, like I'm rolling my eyes 40 years in the future. That drawing looks odd there. Oof, it's rough. Rough. Can't look at it anymore. I tried to read this Thor issue. I think that's where I got the page 4. And it's not a double-sized comic. And I just kind of like, what is going on here? For one thing, this is one thing I don't like what they do. They did this, not all the time, but I hate when they don't tell you who draws it. I'm assuming that's Walt Simonson, but I'm not 100% sure. I know it's not Jackson Geis, who did the previous issue. I think it's Simonson. And again, I'm not a huge Simonson fan. The artwork, I don't like Simonson's work. I know people love Simonson, like they think he's like, to them, he is their whatever, their Byrne or Buscema. But to me, I don't like Simonson. I don't think it's terrible. I just never liked his artwork. And then when he gets really hyper stylized, I really didn't like it. Like when he took over X Factor, I didn't like it. He's doing Thor. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I never got into Thor. But I don't know if it's him because it doesn't say, and I don't like it when the splash page doesn't have the credits of who did the comic in it. And then you flip into it a few issues, it does have Sif, and I like Sif and her hips. But you get into this comic here, and it's like, oh, here we go. Here's the nope, it's not there either. It's not a credit title. It's just like who did the comic? And then of course you skip to the very end. At least the Twin Towers are not look like they're about to fall over like in the other comic. And if you're gonna go, if you're gonna go through that much work to put Sif in those pants, those shorts, to make her so it's legs all day, you could at least draw her better. And then L'Oreal, let's live together. Sorry, L'Oreal. I can't even say it. L'Oreal. I'm thinking of L'Oreal makeup. Lorelei shows up in this, which again I wasn't a big. I always just thought she looked like Murphy Brown, or although Murphy Brown didn't start yet at this time. But oh God, that last panel. Face. I mean, even if you got Enchantress, I like her. This artwork is after coming off the Jackson Geist comic, which wasn't a great comic by the way, but the art was good. This has got to be. I'm almost positive this is Walt Simonson, and I don't like it at all. That close-up panel's pretty decent of Sif there. She has a specific look with her. Her hair, how it's got like that kind of curliness to it, like curly short bang kind of look. I like that. I think that's cool. It's very distinctive of the character, especially when you're doing another yet brunette where you're making her hair all pitch black like that. I think adding that little element there makes it stand out a little bit more. But I didn't read it because I looked at the art and I was like, oh God, I just didn't like it. So I didn't read it. All right, last comic. What are we coming to? Oh, we're already at an hour. Let me wrap this up here quick. I think I went in too long on me just bitching and complaining with the users. That image right there, does that just totally evoke that time period by seeing this image that was on the back of a lot of comic books? The Reach for the Stars with Captain America, because to me it takes me right back to that time period. Transformers. I also didn't read this issue. It's starting to sound like a broken record. Another ad that really takes me back to the time period. I don't know. I got to this comic and I started looking at it. And I know the whole Shockwave thing, and then I was just like, this is what's going through my mind. Maybe Nathan's right, my buddy. Maybe he's right. Maybe I don't like comic books anymore. I don't know. There's an ad for Secret Wars 2. See, all the hype that they put into Secret Wars 2 got me excited as well. It showed, She-Hulk, and She-Hulk's going to be in it, and Fantastic Four She-Hulk. Oh, I got to see it. Even though I couldn't even get through a Fantastic Four She-Hulk by Byrne issue. Again, I think it's the artwork and the idea and the looks, and like I'd see a drawing. I'd see a drawing of a character that I love, and so therefore I just in my mind just assume every time that character shows up, it's going to have that same visual response appeal that I have. And when I see it, and then I see the character show up again in the comic books, and it doesn't have that same pop, and it's not done as well, or it's done by a terrible artist, or whatever, it's phoned in, or it's done by a great artist, but just not that good of a drawing, I can't separate that, and then it makes me not want it. It makes me, for some reason, when I looked in this comic, and I just started seeing some of the artwork. Who's the artist in this one? Sorry for flipping around so much. Alan Humperberg. No, Kupperberg. I think he did the last issue, didn't he? I don't know. One thing I gotta say, this is early in the game, and this is when Transformers was hot. Was getting super popular. I know a lot of people point to the comic book saying, I love the comic book. That's another ad that invokes that time period. I guess he had nothing to go by, because what do you look at? It's like, I don't know. I don't like the comic art was not, like, that's a terrible Megatron drawing. It wasn't doing anything for me. the stories, I guess, at the time were supposed to be better than the cartoon. The cartoon just seemed so much easier to for a kid who couldn't read to digest, even though I loved the comics, and I loved drawing Transformers, and I loved the toys at the time, and I really liked the cartoon, even though the cartoon wasn't great either. I really liked it. And this is, of course, this is before the great movie, the Transformers the movie. I liked aspects. I guess I like parts of all this stuff. But to keep me religiously reading the comic book based on just a few initial reactions I had to the toys coming out and the cartoon, I guess I am the person I'm complaining about. So I'm the kid that I'm complaining about nowadays, and this is 40 years ago. So it might have gotten worse by now, but it's not a new thing. It's been around for a while because there's kids like me. I'm in the Generation X, and I had a dream last night I had a Huffy bike. But anyways, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Let me go back to this. Let me finish it up. It's been an hour. And obviously, you could pause it now and you could tell which comics I had. On the top row, I had the Fantastic Four comic book. On the second row, we know that Transformers and G.I. Joe, or Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Star Wars I had subscriptions to. So we know I had those comics, but did not buy them off the shelf. Secret Wars 2 I definitely bought off the shelf. And Spider-Man. So really even though I had 5 comics back then, I really only bought 3 of them off the shelf. Again, it wasn't the spinner rack, because the spinner rack was used to house other things at the specific bookstore. The comics were on the shelf. Although the sister stores, Fireside, did have them on the spinner rack. I make that because other people are like, oh yeah, back when I used to buy the comics off the spinner rack. Well, I did, but I mean, not every store had a spinner rack. I didn't buy my comics from 7-Eleven. I don't even remember going to 7-Eleven back then because they didn't have a 7-Eleven in town. Closest 7-Eleven at that time, there was one in Troy. There's 2 in Troy. I'm sure there's one in Pontiac, but I didn't go to Pontiac that much. We didn't have a 7-Eleven in the city limits of Rochester or Rochester Hills at that time. I still don't know if they have one nowadays. Maybe they do. So when people talked about, we go to the 7-Eleven, it's like, no, we didn't have a 7-Eleven in Rochester. So we had a Quick Pick, which is sort of like a 7-Eleven, but we didn't have one. So, and again, most of the comic books I bought at this time were from bookstores. And we had a lot of bookstores. I said B. Dalton, Walden, Rochester Book Center, Fireside. That's all in one city. Actually, the Book Barn downtown Rochester popped up. The Quick Pick did have comics, not on a spinner rack, on the bottom shelf of the magazine rack. That's grocery stores, same things. A lot of the comic book that you could buy in non-comic book stores, the newsstand comics, were not on spinner racks. I think that's become this like romanticized, back in the day it's all spinner racks. No, it wasn't. Some places had them, yes, but I would say if we just take Rochester and Rochester Hills, which I'm not saying is the end-all be-all the Rochester, I'm just saying it's the be-all the universe, but I'm saying it's a relatively decent-sized city at the time in the Metro Detroit area. We had Rochester Book Center, had a spinner rack, didn't use it for new comics. Walden Books had theirs on a spinner rack up in the front of the store next to the magazines. Fireside, same thing, in front of the magazine, spinner rack. Quick Pick had them on the magazine shelf. Rochester Book Center had them on the shelf. B. Dalton out there in Meadowbrook, I rarely went there. I want to say yes, they had a spinner rack, but I also remember seeing comic books on a lower shelf. So maybe they had both. So I'm not saying that they weren't around. I'm just saying is everybody just thinks that it's all spinner racks. Like every store, every drugstore, every grocery store, every place in all of America in the 80s had all the new comic books were on Spinnerax, and that was not the case. At least not that I remember. Maybe if you lived in California and New York, because those are the only places that exist in people's minds. But us in here in the Midwest, which is not California, not New York, we did not have Spinnerax in every grocery store. Like I said, if a grocery store had comic books, they usually threw them in with the magazines, and that kind of was that way up until the end of the news stand. So we talked about which comics I have. We kind of went through them. Like I said, I didn't read anything except for Secret Wars 2 of this week. So even though I've blabbed for an hour and 10 minutes, I guess I really didn't have a lot to say. But again, I guess my overarching thing that I'm starting to see creep in is I'm starting to like a certain amount, a small group of comic books at this time. Like I said, I'm kind of reliving this like I did organically, and I'm just coming up with the same conclusion, is that every comic wasn't great. And I would say if I collected on average 2 to 3 comic books a week, then with how many comic books were coming out, then you got to think of how many comic books are coming out in Marvel now, and I'm only getting 3 comics, which is not a good sign, because that means that there's more comics are coming out and I'm liking less percentage, and I don't even like those, really. The smaller percentage of comic books that come out that I like is smaller, with a larger amount being printed and published every week. Same thing with back then. It's like a quarter of the amount of comic books that come out today, and I'm still liking a very small percentage of it. It's boiling down a small percentage of it. Like I said, I think by a certain time I stopped picking up Peter Parker, only when it was like a crossover, like the Kraven's Last Hunt, which is coming up pretty soon. Once my Transformers subscription ran out, I kind of stopped. I went back and bought a few, I think. I bought like the universe, which is like the Marvel universe, but which are the Transformers universe. And I bought that right around the time it came out, and then I bought the limited series for the movie. But G.I. Joe I stuck with a little bit longer too. And I liked G.I. Joe better than Transformers, and I still do today. So once Star Wars is done, like I said, this is 85. They still have the last Power of the Force, the last season of the Jedi figures on the shelf at this time. But by the end of 1985, Star Wars is done. And nobody paid attention to Star Wars from like 86 to whenever the Power of the Force 2 came back out, and they started putting the prequels back in the theater. That's when people going up to the prequels. Sorry, the remastered versions. But I'd say for a solid 86, 87, 88, 89, at least 91, The Heir to the Empire, which is 90 or 91, which started, the West End games kind of got a little bit of popularity, and then going into the expanded universe into the 90s. But I'd say for a good 5 years, though, it was pretty dead. Star Wars is pretty dead. I feel like Star Wars is dead right now. So, all right, we'll stop on that one, and we'll pick up in the next video, and we'll go to week 17, which will finish us out for April. 2 months. Like I said, I'm not having. Things are looking bleak. Let's just put it that way. And like again, I'm seriously questioning if I even like comic books anymore. So not to to burst anybody's bubble if you really enjoyed watching this video, all 40 people that have been watching it. But yeah, I guess it is what it is. We all get old. Our interests change. We all have opinions about things. But I want to keep this series going as long as I can mentally do it. So until next time, catch you guys later.